Hi guys, I'm back here with Bob Barker, and today we're going to be going over 3 fast and easy projects that you can do to make a big difference in your kitchen. So let's get to it. Okay, so these projects I did when I originally did my cabinet doors and drawers. If you want to see that video, I'll put a link up there for you to check that one out. But I had a lot of leftover pieces of wood left, so I wanted to just add a few extra things just to add a little bit more utility in the kitchen. And these 3 projects are all just very simple and easy to do, and I kind of want to remind us all that, you know, not every project needs to be super complex to be useful. So that's kind of the point of this video. So for the first one, we're making some baskets that we're going to be putting on the inside of a couple of the cabinet doors underneath the kitchen sink. So I'm just using the scrap plywood here, just cutting down all the pieces I need on my table saw, and of course using my crosscut sled jig there. And all these projects are like super fast. I did all 3 of them in one day. So for this one, I just cut down the pieces I needed to size, and I'm gluing everything together, and then just kind of hold it there in place. And then we're going to use a brad nailer just to kind of keep it nice and secure until the glue dries, and that's going to hold it well. So we're putting one side, and then we're going to go ahead and put the other side of the basket here. And one thing that I should have did right now is actually put some pocket hole screws in there that's going to attach to the cabinet door. Kind of didn't think about it till later, but it'll work out in the end. But if you do a project like this one, it'd be better to do it now. So I'm going to just be putting 3 strips on the front of this, and this will just hold everything that the wife wants to store in there in place, and it'll still kind of be a little bit open so it's easy to see, and like that's just the design that she preferred. So same as the other ones, we're just gluing everything, getting them into place, and then just tacking them in with the brad nailer. And then we got all 3 of those front strips in, so then the next part is I do want to cover these up. The little holes for the brad nail, so I just use a little wood putty there, and I do sand it all down later. I didn't get any footage of that, but it's not too exciting anyways. So now here I'm putting in the pocket hole screws, and luckily the little spaces in between each one of those little slats in front was big enough for my drill bit to go through, so I just went ahead and put one on each side, and that's what I'm going to use to attach it to the cabinet doors later. So next up, we're going to go ahead and get them painted. So starting off with putting some primer on all of it there, and then I'm going to end up putting the same paint that we used for the cabinet doors afterwards. And don't have any footage of that, but if you want to see it, you can check out the original video with the cabinet doors. So here we're making sure we have enough clearance for it to still close, and I just use those little pieces of painter tape just to mark where the top of it should be. And then you can see just straight through those slats, we just do the pocket hole screws that's going to go directly into the cabinet door, and I made sure that those screws weren't long enough to go through the front, because that would not have made me very happy to see the screws coming out of my new cabinet doors. And of course we made 2 of these, one for each side. In our old cabinets we did have some metal baskets that were inside these doors, but the wife really didn't like the way they looked, but she did like the functionality of it, and that's why we came up with this design here, just to put on these on the new cabinet doors. And that's all it took for this, and it actually adds a good amount of storage space there. Now later on I do plan on putting some sliding out trays similar to the pull-out drawers that I did earlier. I'll also link above for that one, but that'll add even more functionality to that space at a later date. So the second quick project is I wanted a way just to kind of store some of the most used lids for some of the pots that we have. Right now it's a little bit of a mess in there, and some of them are just kind of tedious to reach, so I figured if we mount them on the inside of the doors, that'll make it much easier when we need to use them. So just like the baskets that we made, for this one we're using the same plywood strips, just cutting them down using the table saw sled, and for this one I'm using the pencil eraser there just to kind of hold them in place, because we're making a few little pieces, and those pieces are going to be the ones that we're going to use to mount them to the doors itself. And that eraser top holds the wood in place well without having to get your hand too close to the blade, so just a little bit of safety in mind for that one. And so after we have those cut up, we're just going to go ahead and, just like before, glue everything, and then we'll put some brad nails to get them attached. And then that'll all be kind of held with a bigger screw later. And for these ones, made me a little nervous when I was watching this. Make sure your hands aren't too close when you're brad nailing, because you don't want a stray nail to go into your finger. That would not be very pleasant. And to mount these on the doors, we're basically just going to be screwing straight through the front of them. So I pre-drilled it and made sure to countersink it. And then that'll just kind of go flush. Now you can mount these and then kind of cover it up, the screw if you want, but when I saw it, I was like, it doesn't look bad enough where I really need to bother, so I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So you just kind of figure out right where you want it to be, and I use those spacers that I'm mounting them with to make sure it's far enough away so the lid fits in there. And I did make a little bit of a miscalculation here, so I got it in place. And then when I went to go close the door, I realized that the handle of the lid hit right exactly on the shelf. It was the absolute worst place I could have put it. So I ended up having to take it off, and I just moved it up a little bit, and then it worked out just fine in the end. But that's always a good reminder that you gotta always check to make sure for the things like that so the functionality is still gonna work out right. So on that left side, we did just the one for a bigger lid, and then for this one, we're gonna be doing two because we got some smaller pots that we use frequently, so these lids don't need the whole inside of the cabinet door. We can just kind of split it up and do two of them. So just like before, and this time I am being careful to make sure it actually does close. And we'll put one there, and then for the bottom one, I just put it in place and just kind of looked about where it needed to go, and that gave me a good spot to do it. And like I said, you can see the inside of the cabinet. It's not exactly optimal, so I will be doing a further project later on just to kind of help make that a little nicer. So after we use these for a little bit, it started to scratch the inside of the cabinet door, so I just find these little felt pads online, and I just put those right behind the lids. And then that keeps the lids from kind of banging and scratching up the inside of the door there. So that's project number 2. Moving on to number 3, and I need to rectify this mess right here. So this little cabinet there is where we have a lot of the spices, and so I just basically making a basic spice rack out of some extra plywood there, and you can see the little step design that we drew onto our wood. And for this one, we're cutting out pretty much everything on the crosscut sled on the table saw here. So I'm just basically just kind of going over that little grid pattern that I did. Just cut it down to roughly the shape, and then I just kind of do a diagonal line there just to kind of get into where the steps are going to be. And then for each one, I just cut through just a little bit, and then we'll go through it and do it to the other side. Now, when you cut it this way, if you look on the inside of the piece, the cut's going to go farther than you want it to. But for this type of project, it doesn't matter because you're never going to see the inside of it, and you're not worrying about it messing any kind of structural integrity because it's just a small splice rack. And of course, you could use something else to cut it. You can use a jigsaw or bandsaw if you have one. There's a million different ways you can do it. This is just what I happened to decide I wanted to do at the time. And so with that, we're going to have all of our side pieces cut out. So after that, we're going to get some of the thinner plywood, and we'll be cutting, I guess, the risers and the treads, since this is kind of like steps anyways. One other thing I did want to mention is I made sure to measure the space that it's going into when I first designed this particular piece, because of course you want to make sure it fits. Now on the inside of my cabinet, it's a little bit wider because there is that face frame to it, so I do have to make this a little bit thinner than the actual cabinet itself, but it still will work out in the end when you see it get installed. And using the crosscut sled, especially with my stop there for the repeatable cuts, made this super easy. It's always good to have this kind of setup, or even better one if you can, for projects. It'll just save so much time in the future, so it's worth it to have these things ready for yourself. If you haven't made your own crosscut sled, I will put a link to my video above for that as well. So now we're going to be assembling the spice rack here, and just like the other projects, we're just basically putting some glue on there, and then we'll be brad nailing everything in place, and then afterwards we can go ahead and fill in those holes with some wood putty, sand everything down, and paint it. So for these ones, I'm doing the risers first. So I did the top and the bottom ones just to kind of hold the structure in place so it wasn't moving all around on me. And then just a couple brad nails in each one, making sure I don't go through the sides of the wood as I'm doing it. Then we can flip it over onto its base and then put the treads on. And same thing with this one, just a little bit of glue, a couple brad nails, and it will be done. Honestly, not sure why I didn't make this little spice rack sooner. I just kind of got lazy about it and just never did it, but it's so fast and easy. I think we all need a reminder at times that, you know, it's okay just to kind of do the simple projects that are going to actually be really useful for us. And for this one, the same thing. We're going to go paint it, prime it first, then paint it. And this one will be a different color because the inside of my cabinets are brown. So there's the finished one. And I went to go put it in and I realized, oh, I need to take off my door first because I measured from the face frame and the door kind of protrudes just a little bit. So then we get that into place in there. And you can see that kind of gives it a little bit of a rise for the different spices. When we put them on top, we'll actually be able to see what's in there and get to everything. So we got them all in place and it fits nicely, and now it's actually easy to access. So those are the 3 projects. Like I said, they were super fast and super easy. You know, if you have things like this that you want to do, don't hesitate, don't procrastinate, just get it done. It'll make a big difference, and you'll be happy that you did it. So that's it for today, and we'll see you guys in the next one.